Think you've seen everything from the PS3 and Xbox 360 era? Think again. Beneath the blockbuster franchises were brutally overlooked gems, twisted shooters, wild hack and slashers, and genre-defying RPGs that barely stood a chance against the marketing giants of their time. Here's the best part. While not every game on this list is available on modern platforms, a good number of them are, whether through ports, remasters, or Xbox's excellent backward compatibility. And for the rest, if you still got the original hardware, they're more than worth firing up. Enslaved Odyssey to the West. Before Horizon Zero Dawn, before The Last of Us, there was Enslaved, and hardly anyone noticed. Developed by Ninja Theory, the same team behind Hellblade and DMC, this post-apocalyptic action-adventure reimagines the ancient Chinese tale journey to the West with jaw-dropping visuals, emotional storytelling, and surprisingly sharp banter between the two leads, Monkey and Trip. The chemistry feels real, the world feels lived in, and the combat is smooth and satisfying. Critics praised it, but it launched with barely a whisper, buried by bigger fall releases and zero marketing push. A planned sequel was quietly scrapped. Today, it's playable on modern Xbox consoles thanks to backward compatibility. And if you skipped it back then, now is the perfect time to see why so many consider this one of the best under-the-radar action games of the 7th gen. Binary Domain. You've played shooters with robots before, but not like this. Binary Domain didn't just aim to be another Gears clone, it tried to say something, and no one was listening. Developed by the Yakuza team at Sega, this cyberpunk third-person shooter drops you into a futuristic Tokyo where androids have started to blur the line between machine and human. But what really made it stand out? A surprisingly emotional story, real-time squad communication with voice recognition, and moral choices that actually changed the outcome of the game. It was ahead of its time, and it paid the price for it. Sega didn't market it hard, Western audiences didn't get the tone, and it got swallowed whole by more familiar franchises. But now, it still holds up shockingly well, especially for fans of games like Mass Effect or Deus Ex. Enchanted Arms. It was one of the very first JRPGs on Xbox 360, and almost no one talks about it today. Enchanted Arms, released in 2006 by From Software, yes, the same studio behind Dark Souls, is a turn-based RPG that mixes traditional grid-based combat with a futuristic magic-meets-tech world. You play as Atsuma, a hot-headed student caught up in a war involving ancient golems, rogue mechas, and cursed cities, with a party that's just the right amount of anime absurdity. While it didn't reinvent the genre, it offered something rare at the time. A fully voiced JRPG on Xbox, with flashy battles, monster crafting, and over 70+ hours of content. The story's campy, but endearing, and the combat system holds up surprisingly well. Critics were lukewarm, calling it mid-tier, and it quickly got lost in the flood of bigger RPGs, but for many fans it was their first real taste of JRPGs on an Xbox console. If you still have a physical copy, this one is playable on Xbox via BC. Asura's Wrath. This isn't a game, it's an interactive anime on steroids where your rage is so powerful you literally punch a god through a planet. Asura's Wrath is one of the most over-the-top experiences ever released on PS3 and Xbox 360. Imagine an epic mythological revenge story told with Dragon Ball Z-level spectacle and God of War-style QTE combat, except dialed up to 11. You're Asura, a betrayed demigod whose fury powers every thunderous attack, and nothing, not betrayal, not space Buddhas, not entire armies can stop you. It's bold, bizarre, and unforgettable. But its biggest controversy? The real ending was sold separately as DLC. That decision alone tanked its momentum and left a bitter taste for many. Still, fans never forgot about it. Catherine. It's part puzzle game, part psychological thriller, part steamy adult drama. And somehow, it works. Catherine is what happens when the team behind Persona says, let's make a game about nightmares, cheating, and commitment issues. You play as Vincent, a 30-something man stuck in a love triangle, plagued by twisted dreams where he's forced to climb crumbling towers or fall to his doom. Every night, the puzzles get harder. Every day, the pressure mounts. It's surreal, stylish, and absolutely not what anyone expected from a studio known for demon-summoning high schoolers. But that's exactly why it stood out, even if many players didn't know what to make of it at the time. The original PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 version became a cult hit, but it's the remastered full-body edition, available on PS4 and Switch, that brings it to life for modern players, adding new endings, characters, and harder puzzles. Vanquish. Imagine if Gears of War snorted an energy drink, strapped on rocket boots, and said, "Screw cover," that's Vanquish. Developed by Platinum Games, the same studio behind Bayonetta and Metal Gear Rising, Vanquish flipped the cover shooter formula on its head. Instead of hiding behind walls, you rocket slide across battlefields, slow down time mid-dive, and pull off insane acrobatic kills like a cyborg John Wick on Fast Forward. The story? Over-the-top military sci-fi with a villain monologuing from space. The tone? Straight-faced ridiculous. The gameplay? Flawless. It only lasts about 6 hours, but those 6 hours are a masterclass in adrenaline. Originally buried under bigger 2010 releases, Vanquish never sold well, but critics and action fans couldn't stop raving about it. It later got a remastered edition for modern consoles, bundled with Bayonetta, making it the definitive way to play it today. Remember Me. Capcom wanted this to be their next big sci-fi franchise, but instead, it became one of the most stylish games nobody played. Remember Me takes place in a futuristic Paris where memories can be bought, sold, or straight up stolen. You play as Nilin, a memory hunter who can literally remix people's minds, changing how they remember events to control their decisions. It's a mechanic that still feels unique over a decade later. The game blends hand-to-hand combat, parkour, and memory hacking puzzles, all wrapped in a stunning art direction that screamed next-gen back in 2013. Critics praised the visuals and ideas, but knocked the combat for being too formulaic. Players didn't bite, and Capcom quietly moved on. But if you're looking for an underrated cyberpunk experience with a female lead and ideas that still haven't been duplicated, Remember Me is absolutely worth revisiting. Resonance of Fate. Imagine a turn-based JRPG where every battle looks like a scene out of a John Wick movie. That's Resonance of Fate, and it's just as wild as it sounds. Released by Tri-Ace and published by Sega, this steampunk RPG threw out the traditional RPG rulebook and replaced it with gun ballet. You don't swing swords or cast fireballs here. You flip through the air dual-wielding pistols, launch enemies skyward with submachine guns, and dive between cover like you're choreographing an action movie. But it wasn't just flash. Beneath the slow-mo slides and trace-arounds was a deep, brutal combat system that demanded planning, positioning, and precision. Unfortunately, the game never explained itself well. Most players gave up before unlocking its true potential, and that's part of why it flew under the radar. Years later, a 4K remastered version launched on PS4 and PC, bringing it back into the spotlight. It's still niche, still confusing, but Resonance of Fate is a game worth revisiting. Dark Souls 2. Even in a series built on misery and mystery, Dark Souls 2 stands alone, darker, weirder, and more divisive than anything that came before or after. Released after the breakout success of the original Dark Souls, this sequel had the impossible task of following up a modern classic, and fans weren't ready for how different it felt. With a new director, a fractured world, and a story that barely connects to the first game, DS2 turned the series sideways. But here's the twist. For all its oddities, it's also one of the most replayable and content-rich entries in the entire franchise. Scholar of the First Sin, the remastered edition, overhauled enemy placements, added a new NPC, and bundled all the excellent DLC into one package, creating a completely new experience even for returning players. For those who can look past its reputation, Dark Souls 2 is a hidden gem in plain sight, a dark, dense labyrinth of secrets, build variety, and beautiful decay. TimeShift. Before Quantum Break, before Control, TimeShift gave you the power to bend time in the middle of a firefight, and no one gave it the credit it deserved. Released in 2007 by Saber Interactive, TimeShift is a first-person shooter with a gimmick that should have made it a classic. You can slow, stop, and rewind time at will, even during combat. That means freezing bullets mid-air, undoing death, or flanking enemies before they even realize you moved. The environments react in real time, allowing for clever puzzles and tactical experimentation. Want to walk through a wall of fire? Just rewind time before it spread? Take out a squad without being touched? Easy, stop time, line up your shots, and watch the bodies drop when it resumes. Despite its innovation, TimeShift was overshadowed by Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4, both released the same year. Reviews called it good, not great, and it quietly faded. But fans still remember the raw fun of rewriting combat on the fly. Lollipop Chainsaw. Cheerleaders, chainsaws, and undead hordes. First released in 2012 by Suda51 and James Gunn, Lollipop Chainsaw was a cult classic that thrived on over-the-top violence, campy charm, and unapologetic gore. In September 2024, a remastered version titled Lollipop Chainsaw Repop launched across all modern platforms. This remaster brings the chaos up to modern standards, faster movement, better combos, and revamped QTE options, all while preserving the original script and voice work. Critics were mixed, but fans loved it enough to push 200,000+ units sold within months of launch. Castlevania Lords of Shadow. It took one of gaming's oldest franchises, tossed out the formula, and came back with something darker, bigger, and far more brutal than anyone expected. Castlevania Lords of Shadow is a complete reboot of the legendary series, and instead of two-dimensional exploration, you get a full-blown cinematic, third-person action epic. Developed by Mercury Steam with help from Hideo Kojima, it follows Gabriel Belmont, a grieving warrior battling across cursed lands in a desperate attempt to resurrect his wife. It's got God of War-style combat, massive bosses, sweeping orchestral music, and a surprisingly emotional story. Visually, it still holds up with its gothic architecture, haunting landscapes, and monstrous creature designs. Despite strong sales, Lords of Shadow often gets overlooked in the broader Castlevania conversation, especially with the success of the Netflix show and nostalgia for the older Metroidvania titles. Tales of Graces. Tales of Graces F quietly delivered one of the tightest combat systems in the genre, and barely anyone noticed. Originally released on the Wii in Japan, the enhanced PS3 version, Graces F, finally brought it west with updated visuals, a full English dub, and a brand new post-game arc that extended the story beyond the credits. You play as Asbel, a noble-turned-swordsman dealing with childhood trauma, political war, and ancient technology. But let's be honest, the story's not why this game shines. It's the battle system. Fast, real-time, combo-heavy, and incredibly deep, Graces F took the Tales series to a whole new level. You're not just button-mashing, you're cancelling moves, managing gauges, and executing high-speed team combos with precision. Despite critical praise from fans, it released with little marketing and got lost in the PS3's crowded JRPG lineup. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Forget stealth. This is pure, unapologetic chaos with a katana that can cut through skyscrapers and cyborg politicians in slow motion. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is the loud, lightning-fast spin-off no one saw coming. You play as Raiden, a cyborg ninja slicing his way through enemies, mechs, and monologuing bosses in a post-MGS4 world. Developed by Platinum Games, the same minds behind Bayonetta and Vanquish, this game throws out sneaking and leans fully into high-speed hack-and-slash spectacle. The combat is surgical and satisfying, with the now iconic Blade mode letting you precisely carve enemies into ribbons. Add in a meme-worthy soundtrack, outrageous characters, and one of the most unhinged final boss speeches in gaming history. And you've got a title that feels like it was made by madmen in the best possible way. Initially dismissed by purists for being too different from the main series, Rising has since become a cult favorite, with fans constantly asking for a sequel. Eternal Sonata. It's a JRPG set inside the dying dream of composer Frédéric Chopin, and somehow it works. Eternal Sonata is one of the most unique RPGs of its generation, both conceptually and visually. You play as characters trapped in a dream world imagined by Chopin on his deathbed, where music literally shapes the world. Battles are influenced by light and shadow, and every chapter is tied to a real-life composition. The gameplay is a hybrid turn-based and action combat system, blending positioning, timing, and special attacks in a way that's surprisingly deep. And the art direction? Pure fantasy watercolor, lush, saturated, and timeless. It feels like playing a painting. Released in 2007, it got solid reviews but was quickly forgotten, overshadowed by bigger franchises. The PS3 version added new characters and content, but it never got the attention it deserved from Western audiences. Lost Odyssey. It came from the creator of Final Fantasy, but most people barely remember it existed. And that's a tragedy. Lost Odyssey, released in 2008, was Hironobu Sakaguchi's attempt to bring classic JRPG storytelling to the Xbox 360, a bold move, considering the genre had mostly lived on PlayStation. What players got was a deep, emotional, turn-based RPG that felt like a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy X, but with even more heart. You play as Kaim Argonar, an immortal warrior struggling with centuries of painful memories. The gameplay is solid and traditional, full of strategic battles, a layered magic system, and excellent pacing. But what elevates this game are the short stories written by award-winning Japanese novelist Kiyoshi Shigematsu. Told through Kaim's lost memories, they're poetic, heartbreaking, and unforgettable. Despite being a massive 4-disc epic, Lost Odyssey never got a sequel, and Microsoft quietly moved away from JRPGs soon after. But fans who played it still call it one of the best RPGs of its generation. Dead Rising 2, Off the Record. The world was ending, again, so Frank West brought a camera, a baseball bat wrapped in nails, and a whole lot of sarcasm. Dead Rising 2. Off the Record is more than just a rehash. It's an alternate reality version of Dead Rising 2 that brings back the original game's photojournalist anti-hero, Frank West, and puts him at the center of the zombie outbreak in Fortune City. The story changes, the characters shift, and the gameplay gets a huge upgrade, including new combo weapons, a sandbox mode, and the return of Frank's photo system. It's the perfect blend of mayhem and humor, crafting absurd weapons like a wheelchair turret or fireworks launcher, mowing down hundreds of zombies in a mall, and snapping pictures of the chaos for extra XP. While the base game got attention, Off the Record was overlooked, written off by some as a cash grab when it was really a better version of the original. Sleeping Dogs. It looked like a GTA clone. What we got was a martial arts open-world crime epic that deserved so much more. Sleeping Dogs throws you into the neon-lit streets of Hong Kong as Wei Shen, an undercover cop balancing loyalty to the law and the Triad family he's infiltrating. But what separates it from every other open-world crime game? The combat. Hand-to-hand fights are fast, fluid, and brutal, a system inspired by classic kung fu cinema with takedowns that would make Jackie Chan wince. Add in a surprisingly emotional story, diverse side content, and a gorgeously rendered city, and you've got one of the most complete and underrated sandbox games of its era. Mirror's Edge. First-person shooters are all about guns, right? Not this one. Mirror's Edge dropped in 2008 and flipped the genre on its head. You play as Faith, a runner in a sterile, authoritarian city, delivering sensitive info across rooftops while being hunted from all sides. It's not about combat, it's about momentum, timing, and style. The art direction is stunning. Blinding whites, primary color highlights, and slick urban minimalism. The soundtrack pulses. And the gameplay? Pure parkour bliss when it clicks, and brutal when it doesn't. It was too weird for the mainstream at launch and didn't sell well, but over time it gained cult status. A sequel came years later, but the original is still the tightest, most focused experience. Nier Gestalt. It was glitchy, it was weird, it barely reviewed above a 6. And yet, Nier turned out to be one of the most important games of its generation. Directed by Yoko Taro, Nier Gestalt tells the story of a father, or brother in Replicant, searching for a cure for his dying daughter in a broken, melancholic world. At first glance, it looks like a standard action RPG, until it flips genres mid-game, blends bullet hell with platforming, and hits you with one of the most emotionally devastating twists in gaming. Its gameplay was clunky, its visuals were dated even then. But the music, the writing, and the themes of loss, memory, and identity struck something deep, and fans never forgot.